Hi, I'm Louis Paul. Welcome to the Colors of Prog, Season 6, Episode 2. I'm calling this one Albums with an Infectious Psychedelic Groove. I'll be discussing Peter Bardens, the band Khan, Khan, and Klaatu. So often, progressive music and psychedelic music dovetails in and out, especially during the early 1960s through the early 1970s. First, let's take Peter Bardens' album, The Answer. Now, Bardens was a keyboard player in Them with Van Morrison in 1965. He also played in a band called Shotgun Express with a pre-Jeff Beck group, Rod Stewart, Peter Green, and Mick Fleetwood, uh, later Fleetwood Mac. He joined Camel, Bardens, and is co-credited with co-writing most of the songs on the first 5 albums with Andy Latimer. But Bardens had a somewhat erratic solo career. He's credited with mainly arrangements, keyboards, Mellotron, lots of it, and Hammond on The Answer, recorded in 1969. The album, The Answer, also features Peter Green all over it. Peter Green was in that band I just mentioned, Shotgun Express. So The Answer, it's a tasty delight of bluesy, psychedelic, proggy music. Also of note is the bass player on The Answer is none other than Bruce Thomas, who will go on to join later on Elvis Costello, and at first the Attractions, and then the Imposters. So Bruce Thomas has been around for quite a long time. Of the 6 tunes on The Answer, by the way, remixed and remastered and re-released in 2010, and then again in 2022 on the Cherry Red Esoteric label. Those 6 songs, Don't Goof with the Spook, I Can't Remember, I Don't Want to Go Home, Let's Get It On, and the epic length Homage to the God of Light. Now, all these songs predate stoner rock and all perfect examples of bluesy, psychedelic, progressive music. It's interesting to note, prior to signing with the label Transatlantic, Bardens was also a member of a trio called Village, not The Village, just Village. And Bardens wrote 2 instrumentals that were released on a 45 single, the A-side, the B-side, for Head Records. That band, Village, also featured Bruce Thomas, I just mentioned, and Bill Porter on drums. That single actually appears on the Esoteric remaster for The Answer. It's a pretty cool album. Similar, but not, is the one and only album from Khan, Khan, just like the villain in Star Trek. The album's titled Space Shanty. Now, the origins of the name of the band remain relatively obscure today, as then, with suggestions as far wide as being influenced by Eastern mysticism to the name of the aforementioned Star Trek villain. Now, Khan was released in 1972, originally on the Duran label, and remastered and remixed in 2004 and 2008 by Cherry Red Esoteric. Those guys are always very busy. Now, Khan was considered one of the first progressive supergroup bands due to where the musicians had been performed and the bands they went on to join afterwards. Steve Hillage began playing professionally with Canterbury-based musicians and formed Uriel, Uriel. Also in that band was Dave Stewart, a guitarist turned keyboard player, Hugo Campbell on bass, and Clyde Brooks on percussion. Hillage left Uriel to return to school, and the remaining musicians christened themselves Egg. I think I mentioned Egg before in a previous show. The Egg signed a deal with Decca Records where they recorded a few albums. With Nick Greenwood on bass and Dave Stewart contributing keyboards, while still a member of Egg, Con was formed. Now, gets kind of interesting. Space Shanty features quite the showcase for Steve Hillage's guitar work, as well as the contributions from Stewart on keyboards. The vocals as well are no slouch, with them being split between Hillage and Nick Greenwood. Another marvelous psychedelic bluesy album, but one with a real adventurous progressive pop sound. I would say if you really like the first two Yes albums, which featured Peter Banks on guitar, you would really dig Con. Now, Con toured with a different lineup, even supporting Caravan on some live shows. And Hillage became disillusioned and joined Kevin Ayers' band and appeared on his album Banana More. A chance meeting with a member of Gong, and Hillage decided to join them. He contributed to and appears on some of their best, earliest recordings. But getting back to Space Shanty, it's a shame the band fractured as it did. But as a one-off, it's highly original and quite listenable. The last album is Klaatu, K-L-A-T-T-U. Some of you who might be a little older, say in 50s, maybe a little above, might remember the story of Klaatu. Klaatu are a Canadian band formed in 1973 and are more well known for rumors that circulated in the 1970s that they secretly were the Beatles, reformed under another name. Basically, a studio band consisting of Dee Long and John Woloshook, who played guitars and all kinds of keyboards, including Mellotron, and Terry Draper was the percussionist. They all sang, and yes, the vocals did have a decided influence from the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper in particular, the Beach Boys, the Smile album, and Surf's Up, ELO, and others. And Klaatu really did have a particularly infectious sound. Did they sound like the Beatles? Sometimes. But if you weren't listening too hard, they also added a bit of spacey sci-fi and psychedelic mysticism by writing quirky songs. But the lead-off song, the first album actually, was called EST, actually also known as 3:47 EST, Eastern Standard Time. Go figure. The big hit, well, the most played song from that album was a cover of a Carpenter song, Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft. And it's the one Klaatu are most known for. Hope, released in 1977, is equally as good, although there is nothing as nearly memorable as that Carpenter's cover. But several spins in, and you'll find yourself deep into a proggy rock opera that might be more a magical mystery tour than Sgt. Pepper, but still. Now, Klaatu will record 3 more albums before disbanding in 1981. By then, the songs became shorter, and they moved toward a quirky new wave kind of sound like XTC. But the fans of 347 EST and Hope didn't go along. Still, I'd recommend tracking down the first two Klaatu albums. BGO Records from England remastered the first four albums from the original tapes and released them as 2 for CDs in 2022. So it's Barden. Both albums were short enough to fit onto one CD, but containing 2 albums worth, oh, if you still have the first 2 Klaatu albums, they're worth keeping. Their value is quite something. And it's a remembrance of a time when the whole world, well, some of it anyway, thought the Beatles had returned. It was a weird thing. That lasted for the first 2 albums. I still have Klaatu's first album on vinyl, and it's in mint condition, so I don't know, I should see what it's worth. Anyway, so Peter Bardens, Kong, and Klaatu. So really psychedelic progressive music with a infectious groove. Thanks for watching. Be back soon.